The passing of Richard the Old Man Harrison didn't only mark the end of an era, did you know that? It made Corey Harrison extremely wealthy. Pawn Stars' success is a secret tale of wealth, inheritance, and unexpected family dynamics. What exactly did Corey's renowned grandfather leave him? Furthermore, who was covertly excluded from the will? The reality about everything from expensive automobiles to riches that change people's lives is more shocking than fans may think. We share the 9 amazing things that Corey inherited from the elderly man in this video, including trade secrets that money cannot purchase. The 9th is work ethic. None of the qualities that Richard Harrison, the elderly man, instilled in his grandson Corey were more distinctive than his unwavering work ethic. Through decades of personal hardship, military duty, and entrepreneurial fortitude, the old man developed a strong belief in the importance of hard labor. His path from Navy veteran to co-founder of the renowned gold and silver pawn business was based on perseverance, self-control, and a determination to never take the easy route. The elderly man was remarkably well known for his unflinching commitment to his work. It was said that since 1994, he had not missed a day of work, a pattern that came to represent his personality. He was pushed to that degree of dedication by pride in his work and the fulfillment that comes from doing honest work, not by need. Being raised in such a setting made a lasting influence on Corey. He learned from seeing his grandfather arrive every morning, rain or shine, healthy or exhausted, that perseverance and hard work are more important for success than skill or good fortune. Early adoption of this idea meant that Corey began from the bottom of the pawn shop and worked his way up through the years by observation and hard effort. The elderly man never gave him special treatment merely because he was related. He made Corey work hard and be responsible in order to earn his spot. A sense of accountability and pride in his job were instilled in Corey by this tough love method. His grandfather's habits of being early, staying late, and even paying attention to every deal he made eventually began to resemble his own. Corey discovered, like the elderly guy, that the ultimate reward for hard labor is not only financial gain but also self-respect. You put your all into it. Since success and reputation are meaningless without the daily training to maintain them, Corey remained grounded, as his grandfather had described him, even after becoming famous through Pawn Stars. The old man's dedication to this lesson was further demonstrated by his persistence in the face of adversity. After serving in the Navy, he and his spouse were subjected to severe financial servitude and, at one point, lost a significant portion of their funds as a result of the 1980s real estate bubble. However, instead of collapsing, the elderly guy got back up and started constructing a gold and silver coin store from the ground up, which then expanded into an empire of pawn shops. Corey learned that failure is temporary as long as you don't give up, thanks to his resilience and ability to start over with less. The old man taught him to face and stand in the face of hardship, and viewing difficulties as a chance to demonstrate one's strength. The same is true of Corey's career. Like his grandfather, he has persevered through difficult circumstances with purpose and determination, and ups and downs have only strengthened his resolve. If you believe that Corey became wealthy when the old guy passed away, you should wait to see what happened next. I can't believe it. 8. The leadership role of the boss. One of Richard the Old Man Harrison's most distinctive characteristics was his boss persona, a dominant yet calm leadership style that established the tone for all employees at the gold and silver pawn business. The old man was the head of the family and the company, and his power came from discipline, experience, and an unyielding sense of justice rather than from threats. Because he lived up to the same standards that he required from others, his family members and employees respected him in addition to the fact that he issued instructions. He exuded confidence by his calm management, whether he was handling customers, keeping track of goods, or arbitrating disputes within the store. This strategy eventually turned into a model for how Harrison Empire leadership ought to appear. His grandson, Corey, was the one who most truly acquired and subsequently lived this leadership approach out of all the people who worked with him. Since his first days in the shop, he has seen the elderly guy exercise authority with a healthy dose of compassion. The elderly man's humor and caustic wit brightened the mood, but he was harsh when needed. Corey learned from the combination of these two qualities that respect and approachability are key components of effective leadership. As a result, when Corey's turn came to assume greater responsibility, particularly as the elderly man was starting to step back from day-to-day activities, his own character began to develop steadily in line with the elderly man's example. Corey eventually made the change a reality when he took on a full-time managerial position at the gold and silver pawn store, where he was in charge of day-to-day operations, staff supervision, and important business choices. Observing the elderly guy handle difficult situations with composure and decisiveness throughout the years helped him develop his leadership style. Corey had a leadership style similar to his grandfather's, which was firm and decisive. He discovered that making numerous tough decisions, often regretful but always on time, is the foundation of a successful business. When an employee failed to meet standards, Corey had no qualms about terminating them, exactly as the old guy would have done. Aside from occasionally using a heavy hand, Corey believed it was essential to care for his team. The old man had always advocated for setting a good example, and Corey continued this philosophy by mentoring his employees through difficult times and rewarding effort when it was due. As the boss's grandson and a capable leader in his own right, Corey earned respect by being both fair and tough. The store experienced sleeplessness while he was in charge. It was running smoothly, continuing to hold its position as one of the most prosperous pawnshops in the world. 7. The family home. The family estate was one of the most important aspects of Richard the Old Man Harrison's legacy when he went away. It came to symbolize both his material prosperity and the close ties that bound the Harrison family together. The home was only one part of the estate. Years of arduous labor, tenacity, and the benefits of creating something significant from modest beginnings were all reflected in it. Having come from humble beginnings in North Carolina and subsequently owning the renowned gold and silver pawn store in Las Vegas, the elderly man's ability to provide his family such a home was a feat in and of itself. Corey Harrison, his grandson and longtime Pawn Stars co-star, was given half ownership of the estate after his death, ensuring that the family's material and spiritual legacy was preserved. In order to handle and maintain the estate, Rick Harrison, Corey's father and the elderly man's son, was appointed as the principal executor. Corey was only included as a ceremonial and fictitious co-owner, carrying on the family tradition from one generation to the next. An indication that Corey's loyalty and trust in the state were being paid by the elderly man. For Corey, inheritance encompassed more than just homes, belongings, or financial prosperity. Continuity was the issue. His grandfather shaped his life both personally and professionally, and the estate now serves as a physical reminder of his impact and a lasting bond with the man who may have had little knowledge of it. The family used it as a physical anchor in many ways, where the past and present coexisted together. Another instance of Pawn Stars, the television program that made the Harrison family famous worldwide, occurred on their land. The show's popularity meant that Old Man would leave the hustle and bustle of Las Vegas and move into a more opulent home, signifying decades of pawn industry labor. The old man persevered despite all the wealth and renown that accompanied it. He just put his family first. For this reason, he added Corey to the estate property. The conviction that ownership, solidarity, and family are important. The Harrison name would thus carry on the tradition of diligence, devotion, and entrepreneurship that had marked their ascent to fame. Additionally, it guaranteed Corey's place in the family's history. A person who would inherit stewardship instead of money. Corey became extremely wealthy after the old man's passing, even if you may believe you've heard it all. 6. Exotic vehicles. Among the many things Richard the Old Man Harrison was well known for, his passion for vintage automobiles was one of his most ardent interests. He accumulated a remarkable collection of antique cars throughout the years, which demonstrated both his personality and his level of achievement. Full of character, bold, and sophisticated. The 1962 Cadillac Sedan DeVille, the 1967 Chevrolet 150, the 1966 Imperial Convertible, and the 1963 Chrysler Imperial were among the classic models that made his garage a living museum of American automotive history. Every automobile has a unique tale to tell, connected to the times they were from and the memories the elderly guy made of them. These were more than just luxuries. He was reminded of the post-war era, when automobiles stood for accomplishment, liberty, and pride, by these representations of craftsmanship and nostalgia. The old man had always had a kind of attachment to automobiles. Both his own family and Pawn Stars viewers were aware of his love for cars. He was interested in cars. From the interior upholstery to the chrome accents, he ensured that every element was maintained in perfect shape. His 1937 Oldsmobile and 1955 Ford F-100 pickup were two of his favorites since they reflected his admiration for well-made, tough, and understated design. Beyond their aesthetic value, these vehicles were reminders of his early years, when he was not yet wealthy and, to be honest, struggling to make ends meet. The 1962 Lincoln Continental he received on Pawn Stars from his son Rick and grandson Corey is arguably the most memorable vehicle in his collection. It was restored for about $25,000 by the family as a beautiful homage to their love and respect for him. Across generations of Harrisons, that car served as a bridge thanks to its iconic lines and signature doors. His cars, which were more than simply a collection of metal and engines, became the bridge of memories and values after the elderly man passed away. Although the identities of the family members who received which particular cars were never disclosed, it is thought that Corey was left with at least some of this extremely treasured collection. In many respects, Corey shared his grandfather's love of American heritage and craftsmanship, so the automobile gift would have been heartfelt. These vehicles were not only cherished family heirlooms to Corey, but also cherished mementos of the man who instilled in him the importance of perseverance, a love of history, and the delight of collecting items with a backstory. A car may be valuable to a lot of people. For the elderly guy, these were principles, longevity, style, and longevity. Fifth, recognizing phony products. An enhanced feeling of authenticity rather than a tangible property was one of the most precious inheritances that Corey Harrison acquired from his grandfather, Richard the Old Man Harrison. A unique capacity to tell authentic gems from convincing fakes. In the realm of pawnbroking, this ability is essential. Innumerable things, ranging from jewelry and antiques to historical artifacts, visit the gold and silver pawn shop every day. Gaining or losing thousands of dollars could be the difference between a real item and a fake. Nobody knew this more than the elderly man. After working in the industry for decades, he honed an innate sense of provenance, craftsmanship, and materials. This was more than just book knowledge. Through negotiation, experience, and a few missteps along the way, it was wisdom. Corey saw these lessons firsthand as a result of growing up in that setting. Learning to look past appearances and to have faith in his ability to assess sincerity and worth. From a young age, Corey seen his grandfather working quietly and effectively. The elderly guy handled things in a certain manner, slipping them in and out of his hands, feeling their weight in his palms, and picking up on details that most people would overlook, like the stitching on an old coat or the patina on a coin from long ago. He would instill in Corey the value of genuineness in the small things. Corey eventually began to follow these same patterns, turning observation into intuition. As Pawn Stars gained popularity, the public realized that Corey had a reputation of his own. He frequently questioned origin stories, pointed out discrepancies, or questioned sellers' claims. Corey gained the respect and confidence of the store and program viewers by coming very near to having an eye for fakes, even though he didn't always have his grandfather's renowned accuracy. Beyond only being able to recognize the objects, this innate talent is highly unique. Recognizing people on a deeper level, the elderly guy correctly stated that a pawnbroker is about reading the face on the other side of the counter, not only about objects. A phony narrative might indicate a phony product. That would be passed on to Corey as well. Learning to strike a delicate balance between empathy and mistrust. Recognizing that not everyone was lying to him, but also knowing that integrity needed to be confirmed rather than presumed. His ability to manage the family firm without suffering needless losses was aided by this mindset. Maintaining the professional ethics upon which the gold and silver pawn store was founded is also important. By turning the ability to recognize fakes into a definition of life, one learns to recognize what is genuine in people rather than just things. The fourth location is Gold and Silver Pawn Shop. A company founded on trust, compromise, and decades of arduous labor, the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop in Las Vegas has long been the beating heart of the Harrison family's tradition. Established in 1988 by Richard Harrison, the elderly man, and his son Rick, the company started out as a small, understated enterprise before becoming one of the most well-known pawn shops globally, primarily due to the popularity of the History Channel's Pawn Stars series. Over time, the elderly man came to represent the shop's identity, establishing a standard for conducting business and influencing its culture with his composed yet authoritative demeanor. Behind the counter, every transaction was fair, measured, and influenced by him. However, as he became older and his speed decreased, the elderly guy ensured that his legacy would be carried on without any problems. He made sure the family business would continue to thrive for many years to come by educating his grandson, Corey Harrison, to assume a leadership position in the firm long before he passed away. One of the older man's mentorship's most intentional and significant features was this slow transfer of responsibility. He supported experiential learning, letting Corey make his own errors and grow from them instead of insulating him from the harsh realities of the industry. Corey began at the bottom, helping customers, cleaning display cases, and sweeping floors before rising to deal negotiation and transaction management. With every step, the elderly man taught him the same principles: honesty, accuracy, and consistency that had established the shop's reputation. Rick and the entire crew trusted Corey, who was already a vital component of the shop's everyday operations by the time of his grandfather's death. Because of this foresight, the shop's stability and profitability were maintained and the turbulence that frequently follows a founder's departure was minimized, ensuring a seamless leadership transition. However, the family entered a new era after the old guy passed away. The leadership of the gold and silver pawn store had now been divided between Rick and Corey, who would take care of running it themselves. Rick, the building's principal owner, became its public face while concentrating on big-picture planning. After taking over, Corey became the shop's full-time manager, ensuring that day-to-day operations were run efficiently. This state was reminiscent of a time when the old man gained prominence, when Rick concentrated on the business's public image and larger issues while Corey handled all of the business's internal planning and day-to-day operations. For as long as shared management was in place, the store thrived and remained a rare treasure in Las Vegas business and popular culture. The daily operations of almost every aspect still included some of the raw old man. Out of sheer reverence attributed to the parties involved in a transaction to appreciating the timeliness or history of antique craftsmanship. In addition to being a business, the gold and silver pawn shop symbolizes the tenacity and solidarity of the Harrison family. Every object there has a tale to tell, just like the family. In order to honor the founder and maintain the firm, Corey believed that it was important to retain a portion of it in addition to ownership. Actually undamaged. Continuing the devotion, Corey works around the clock to preserve the elderly man's vision and preserve the memory that hard work and family dedication can make dreams come true. This idea unfolds so that everyone can witness a solid monument to the old man's life and, eventually, a sign of success that spans generations, demonstrating that his knowledge and insights are the driving force behind every transaction made within well-known walls. 3. Important life lessons. Perhaps the most significant of the numerous gifts that Harrison gave to his grandson Corey was the life lessons he learned from his 21 years of duty in the U.S. Navy. Prior to being well known on Pawn Stars, the elderly man was a sailor who gained perseverance, discipline, and duty the difficult way. His experience in the Navy helped him mold his outlook on life and establish the values that would subsequently guide his career and personal relationships. He learned to adjust to varied situations, follow protocol, and accept responsibility for his actions during his time serving on several ships and in a variety of jobs. Long after his military duty was over, he continued to uphold the ideals that these experiences had taught him, a profound respect for hard labor and organization. Corey learned those same things from his grandfather growing up, not from lectures but from the old man's constant example of honesty and morality. The perseverance and discipline of the elderly guy served as the foundation for Corey's own work ethic. He instilled in his grandson the belief that achievement was a gradual process. It takes perseverance, dedication, and the capacity to bounce back from failures. Conversations at the gold and silver pawn store were always filled with tales of the elderly man's time in the Navy. Then he would explain to Corey that being a leader means being strong and humble. The elderly guy had personal experience with hardships, including extended deployments at sea or in other military operations, as well as the difficulties of supporting a family on a meager salary after leaving the military. However, he used those events to develop his perspective and character rather than becoming hardened. He taught Corey the value of endurance, the capacity to persevere in the face of uncertainty. It became a fundamental part of the core that guided Corey's approach to leadership, business, and life. In addition to teaching Corey discipline, the elderly man also instilled in him qualities found in the Navy, such as respect for authority and teamwork, which are crucial in the family company. According to the pawning shop, each person has a job, just like on a naval ship, and success is a result of their collaboration and respect for one another. Being in control does not entail giving orders, as Old Man often reminded Corey. Recognizing people's skills and assisting them in creating their best work is what it is. That forceful, equitable, and compassionate leadership style that has come to define Corey's leadership attributes was cultivated in part by the lesson. The same way the Old Man trusted his shipmates to do their jobs, Corey would quickly come to trust his staff to run the shop on a daily basis as he held them to high standards. The Harrison family was distinguished by its shared purpose and respect for structure, which persisted throughout generations. This legacy of military principles was drawn from commercial leadership. Second, some cash. By the time of his death, Richard Harrison had amassed a substantial fortune of approximately $8 million. The outcome of his decades-long efforts, astute business judgments, and crucial contribution to making the gold and silver pawnshop a worldwide sensation through the popular Pawn Stars television series. It took time for this fortune to accumulate. It stood for years of perseverance, fortitude, and cautious handling. From his early Navy hardships to operating a modest pawn store with little money, the Old Man's path was one of perseverance and calculated development. A portion of his estate, which included investments and financial assets, was divided among his family members upon his death in 2018. As the chief administrator, Rick, his son, was entrusted with overseeing the estate and making sure his father's desires were fulfilled. The beneficiaries included Corey Harrison, who benefited financially from his grandfather's fortune, a bequest that represented trust and an understanding of his place in the Harrison family's history. Corey's inheritance from the elderly guy was much more than just money. It was an extension of legacy and accountability. Working with his grandfather for many years taught Corey to view money as a tool to get opportunity and stability rather than as an aim in and of itself. The elderly gentleman was never one to boast about his wealth. He was an advocate of leading a simple life and utilizing his income to sustain his family, run his company, and make prudent investments. How Corey was to handle his inheritance was also determined by that society. He saw it as an addition to the business lessons the elderly man had taught him, which included being thrifty, thinking long-term, and appreciating hard work, rather than his sudden fortune. Every dollar had a purpose and was associated with the several hours his grandfather had spent working to build a prosperous family business. It was extremely evident that the old man's will was executed in a very methodical and procedural manner. His wall-on-cap-heiress will included. The majority of his immediate family, whether they were blood relatives or not, due to his orderly nature and character disposition, had to make the difficult choice to keep one of his boys out of the inheritance, though, was Christopher. Some may be surprised to see that this shows the old man's concern for accountability and fair play in the family. Any misunderstandings or disputes over his estate after his death would be resolved if his will specified the beneficiaries in detail. For Corey, this bequest would also indicate that he was not merely a target of familial favoritism, but rather that his grandfather personally trusted him. Years of diligence, loyalty, and commitment to the family business empire are validated. Stay tuned for our greatest inheritance. Fans will be shocked to learn how wealthy Corey became after the old man passed away. First, recollections and familial heritage. Beyond the material gifts of money, real estate, and a business, Corey Harrison's grandfather Richard the Old Man Harrison gave him the most significant present of all, a priceless collection of memories and an enduring family heritage. These recollections are not limited to Pawn Stars episodes or pictures. As a result of years of working alongside his grandfather, Corey has cherished these experiences. Beyond just a business associate, the old man was more. He was a guide, a father figure and a mentor who shaped Corey's personality. They spent long days together behind the counter of the pawn store that dealt in gold and silver. There were countless discussions and fun family times that frequently counterbalanced the demands of celebrity. These encounters formed the basis of Corey's knowledge of life, family, and the true meaning of leaving a legacy. The giggles. Their friendship and lessons are still reverberated within the pawn shop's walls. A reminder that the old man's presence is still very much alive even if he is no longer here. It goes without saying that Corey inherited the spirit of the Harrison family by inheriting those memories. The principles of his grandfather, respect, integrity, and fortitude, were mirrored in all that Corey did under such circumstances. The elderly man learnt his lesson through anecdotes in a very humorous yet sage manner, which caused him to miss it inwardly. Without humility, he said, there could be no such thing as hollow success. Family should take precedence over celebrity. Not only did these teachings apply to the commercial operations of that shop, but they also had an impact on everything. Something pertaining to Corey. His grandfather's voice in the back of his mind watches everything Corey does, from how he deals with his followers and overseas staff to how he makes decisions for himself. However, the Pawn Stars brand's cultural influence has allowed the old man's legacy to endure. It began as a small family business and has now grown to become a symbol of Americana and enterprise. This is primarily because of the old man's humor and sincerity, which he brought to the show. He was a favorite among fans because of his straightforward and unflappable demeanor. However, it was precisely this candor that allowed him to connect with audiences across the country. In terms of appearing on that show, Corey finds it easier to maintain family continuity than to maintain his notoriety. It is preserving the performance of his grandfather and all that he stood for. As a testament to old man's impact, each program makes sure that the values of honesty, hard effort, and family togetherness that characterized his life are still seen by the younger generations. These are the 9 amazing things that Corey Harrison got from the renowned old man himself. If discovering these hidden facts was enjoyable to you, please remember to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes glimpses at your favorite reality stars. Before you leave, watch the next video to see even more shocking details about the Pawn Stars family.